A tough question, and it happens, maybe not so much another operator making the offer, but the owner sees her cousin at a family reunion, and she says, I'm getting X amount of dollars, what are you getting on your farm? And it becomes a competition, and I think might need to educate myself on this.
You speak into that one, that'll be good.
For the slides.
It's a trigger underneath. There you go.
So here is the question that Stu posed to me. First of all, I want to apologize. I don't know if any of you have ever had vertigo. From now time and again, I get a little inner ear infection, and I'm going to lead on this podium, if you don't mind. It makes you a little dizzy. So I apologize for that. The approach that you take, of course, depends on where you're coming from, the type of lease you have now, your current relationship with the owner of the property. Over time, there's been a change there, but there are still several lease forms in place. And I've listed them there, and we'll give you some examples later. Of course, there's the standard 50-50 crop share lease, which was standard for many, many years. When I began with Busey some 25 years ago, I think in our whole department we had 2 cash rent leases. That certainly has changed. And began to, first of all, modify those leases. And so we had leases developed with supplemental rents where the tenant would pay the owner an additional dollars per acre in order to rent the property. It went by various names, supplemental rent or privilege rent, some people called it. But in essence, it was a way to increase the owner's share of the income in competition against some of the cash leases that were beginning to appear. 60-40 crop share lease. This actually came about in our department because of a question many years ago that some of you may remember, that for charitable entities, who is our clients on many properties we manage, if they shared in the risk and had shared the cost of the inputs, there was a question as to whether it was a taxable amount as opposed to a charitable gift. So we started using several of those leases and actually found that they work very well. We still have some in place now. The custom lease, the custom lease is the opposite of a cash rent lease. The custom lease, the owner bears all the risk, pays for all the inputs, pays the operator costs for planting, harvesting, and it can be by a total amount per acre, or it can be by practice. These have been very profitable over the past few years, as you can imagine. And then we had the standard cash rent lease, which appeared, and it was generally a set amount per acre, generally half up front, half the end of the year. What we often found, and a lot of people did, not just us, when you sign those leases late summer, early fall, before a month passed, it was already outdated. It either favored the owner or favored the tenants, and already had some situations there. So maybe some of the aspects of the old crop share lease weren't so bad, and started varying the cash rent leases according to the yields and prices associated with the crop. And there are a lot of these flex or variable or bonus leases in effect now. Gave some examples here, and the individual costs and prices and so forth don't matter so much. It's the comparison between the two. But you can see we did use about 180 bushel per acre yield. After this year, that sounds awfully good, but we know some of you probably have some 5-year averages of 200 bushel or more, and 50 bushel per acres for soybeans. The price we've shown there was the price when we did these sheets last week, the price for next fall. These would be projections for 2013. Now, the one thing unusual about this, or not unusual, but we aren't necessarily used to thinking in these terms, is this is for the enterprise year. So these are the costs associated with the 2013 crop and the grain sales associated with the 2013 crop. Most of our owners are used to paying for inputs the year before and selling the crop the year after, so you quite often get a mix of those, and you'll find that the owners don't necessarily know what their profit for that particular crop year is. And I think this does a good job of showing that. You can see at the bottom there the indicated net using those numbers. For the 50-50, the net was about $268 per acre. The supplemental rent, where it was a 50-50 arrangement, but $25 per acre supplemental rent, ended up at $293. The 60-40, as I'd indicated to you before, actually came in this situation a little above the 50-50 or the supplemental. The other advantage for the owner, it depends on what they're looking for, and that's what we'll get to here later. He doesn't need to have a big cash balance to share those input costs. The custom farm lease, as I indicated, the owner bears he bears all the expenses, all the risk, but it also can be very profitable, and you can see how it measures up against the other type of leases. Indicated there like $441 per acre. We used in this example a $350 per acre fixed rent, which is probably middle of the road this day and age, but a good figure, I think, to use for comparison. The last column uses a base rent plus 30% flex based on the costs associated with the crop and so forth. So you can see how those come in. If you change those yields, you see that it moves around a little bit. And the projected 50-50 net is about $316 per acre. This is a fact that I think many owners aren't aware of. We, like most of you, we all year long we try to make income. At the end of the year we pay as many bills as we can to hide it. But we have several where this year that net income for the 50-50 is around $400 per acre. So that person that indicates they give you $400 per acre may not be any better than where you already are. So you need to know where you stand, and this is, of course, from the owner's perspective, but you're dealing with the owner to make your point to keep the lease. As I mentioned, the 50-50 lease, they started tweaking it. Supplemental rent was one way. Another way was maybe the operator paid all of the chemical, and all different combinations there. The recent, and I didn't make a chart of this, but the recent survey of the Society of Farm Managers indicated that about 50% of the leases were cash rent or flex cash, and the rest were combinations of crop share, 60-40, and custom. Might surprise you. Someone indicates that you're out of date. Cash rent's the only way farms are leased anymore. That's not necessarily true. This was from Nick Paulson's article he had in Farm Doc. I think he got a lot of his information from the USDA and Farm Business Farm Management. Indicated the comparison between the 50-50, the 60-40, and the cash rent shown by the NASS records. Now, agreeably, the NASS cash rent may be somewhat lower than we think it should be, but it does give a good comparison that maybe these other lease types perform pretty well as well. This was his estimate based on the 2012 crop. if you're talking to your owner and he comes to you and say, somebody mentioned to me that the only way to go is cash rent, and what can you tell me about it? Should I be considering this type of thing? If they throw out a figure you don't want to, if they say 400, you don't want to immediately say 4.25 without knowing where you stand. You need to know the goals of your owners, and there are certain things you lose in a cash rent situation, is the control of the property. You have less control over conservation practices, tile repair, and that sort of thing. You then look to see how those goals fit into your lease categories. An example might be, I have an owner who really likes to grow some wheat. I know it's not necessarily an income producer. He just likes it. You may not want a high cash rent situation. You may not want the 50-50. That may be a good indication where you might grow on a custom basis. Care and control of the asset is something you need to make it clear to them that if you're currently in a crop share arrangement, that he would lose some control. You have that flexibility. It's more of a partnership. Had a situation last year that kind of pointed that out to me, that it's important to some people. A man, he sold some property elsewhere, reinvested in a farm in McLean County, a nice farm, subject to a good cash rent lease at a good level. The tenant thought that was really the thing, and would help him maintain his tenancy on that. The owner, his other properties were on a 50-50 with a supplemental. That's what he wanted. He'd like to be able to control the crop grown, or at least have some say in it. He wasn't in favor of corn after corn. He knew that generally high cash renters are in favor of that. And a kind of a nice thing happened, which kind of points out the partnership. The tenant said, well, we'll work with you on that basis. We know there's an area in this part of the farm that needs some drainage. We'll be glad to participate with you in that drainage and pay for the cost involved. And that more of a partnership, kind of rare, but it happens, and that happened to be that owner's goals. One way, if you're on a crop share, you can share some of those costs and maintenance of conservation and tile. You can offer to share the information of GPS maps and so forth with your owners. The main factors, of course, in any lease are honesty, integrity, and stewardship of the farmland. Extremely important, and you may have a long-term history with those owners you're working with, and with your family, and you've paid for a lot of the extra care given to the property. Your owner may be in favor of no-till, and probably something that a cash rent operator may not be. You know your specialties. You have possibly experience growing seed corn, seed beans, specialty crops of Frito-Lay or food-grade corn. So you don't be afraid to use those tools, because they all come into play when you're conversing with the owner. You need to know what his hot points are, and let him know how those fit you. I think there's a place for all types of leases. Some of the accounts that I have several farms, and we have a combination. We have a cash rent on some, we have 50-50 on some, we have custom on some, a good balance. I think also from the tenant's point of view, it wouldn't be good, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have that balance as well. We don't live in a bubble. We know that the trend is towards cash rent, and we need to be familiar with that and be able to work with it. don't be under the impression that your situation is the same as everyone else's, and jump in and make some decisions that get you in trouble. Basically, I think that's what I have, Stu. I'm not a real extensive report here, but I think some points that definitely to consider. Didn't have a handout. We do have some of those spreadsheets in the back if you want to stop at our booth and take a look at that. Mentioned watching the election. I was very interested in it, as were all of you, and we hope and pray that it turned out the best way for our country and selfishly for agriculture. Thank you.